reads, Effie Triantafilopoulos, MPP, urges federal government to reinstate mandatory minimum sentences for serious crimes. And here to chat about this is the headline maker herself, Oakville, North Burlington MPP, Effie Triantafilopoulos. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Jason. You pronounced my name beautifully. I really appreciate your efforts.
You know, I know it's always such a challenge. I've been here for 3 years. It should seem like nothing at this point, but it's still a challenge when you see all those letters together. We talk about it every time we chat. But Effie, serious matters for this particular topic here. You know, you put out this press release about mandatory minimum sentences, and I'm curious what brought it about and why come out with this press release.
Well, last week in the legislature, I brought forward a motion, and the motion was basically to shed light on the fact that we do need reform of our criminal code. The motion essentially calls on the federal government to restore minimum mandatory sentences for serious crimes. And what I'm really getting at here is the fact that we've all noticed the increase in crime in our communities. We've seen auto thefts. We've seen carjackings of cars. We've heard of people who actually have their front door broken in and guns to their head, asking for the keys to their vehicles. There's a real concern in our community about the fact that the federal government's legislation isn't doing enough to protect our peaceful communities. And so my motion was really to amplify that, to be able to ask the federal government to restore minimum monthly sentences for serious crimes and repeat offenders. It's focusing on those repeat offenders. We hear far too often that violent repeat offenders are released, granted bail almost instantly, and then they keep reoffending, and it's like a revolving door. So this was what my motion was trying to direct people's attention to.
Now, how does this work, though, with you being a provincial politician and representing Oakville, North Burlington? This is something that has to happen at a federal level. So is this just a matter of speaking out and having a voice and trying to get attention? Because it's nothing that you can actually do within the confines of your particular position.
You're absolutely right. It's that we as provincial legislators are calling on the federal government to take action. And Ontario isn't alone. Our Solicitor General recently, along with other Solicitor Generals across Canada, provinces have written to the Prime Minister. They've asked for this kind of reform to take place. So it's a unified voice from all the provinces and territories that we need reform. We need to be able to kind of close this gap that exists in the criminal code.
Now, when you talk about minimum sentences, you already mentioned repeat offenders, and I think everyone is well aware that, yeah, revolving door, as you said, that is happening. I've heard it from Halton Police here as well. It's very frustrating, not just for us as people in the community, but for police as well to continue to arrest these people. Having said that, though, what type of minimum sentences are you wanting, are you asking for to be put in place?
In 2022, the federal government had actually passed legislation in which certain violent offenses, offenses that included offenses dealing with drugs and other offenses dealing with firearms, they were taken out of the criminal code. We're asking that those kinds of offenses be reinstated and specifically focused on the repeat offenders, so that we're really looking to target individuals who are part of organized crime networks, as an example. We know that with the car thefts, so much of that is lucrative. It's organized crime. It's a financial crime. And so if we're able to work with our law enforcement, and Halton Police, as you know, has been working very diligently on this issue to be able to reduce some of this auto theft crime in our communities. It's really focused on those kinds of criminal activities that have really been lucrative for these organized crimes to be able to suppress them. It requires working as well to deal with border security. We know that a lot of guns illegal guns come across our borders. So it's really putting a spotlight on those areas where we really need to address. And we also need to remember that victims and their families don't feel safe in our communities. Oakville has always been a very, very safe community. Halton has been a very safe community. And yet these days, just last week, there was a forum that was organized by citizens in our community. We had over 300 people attend this meeting to talk about the concern that they had in terms of not feeling safe in their own homes.
Yeah, so obviously this is something that will be positively received by the community. I'm curious now, though, you get that positive reception from from the provincial government that is surrounding you, and along with that, the people in the community. But what are the next steps here?
Well, in the case of my motion, we're going to be actually debating it in February. I introduced it, it was tabled with the legislature, but on February the 18th, I'm actually going to be bringing forward the legislation, debating it in the House, and calling on all of my colleagues in the legislature to vote for the motion. That will send if our legislature votes in favor, that will send a very clear signal to the federal government that the Ontario legislature is really requesting more action be taken by the federal government. And as I mentioned as well, we're not alone. All provinces and territories are feeling the increase in crime, and really the need to be able to be laser focused on those repeat offenders, the repeat criminals that have been able to be back on our streets. So we need bail reform. We also need to be able to close the gap on these mandatory minimum sentences. So those are the areas where our focus will be. And one of the other things I'll speak about, which is a very kind of personal story to a family that actually lives in Halton, and that is Paul and Florence Henderson, who were in the news at the time when their 25-year-old daughter had actually been murdered by an individual who had been out on 4 different occasions. He was actually on house arrest at the time when he got out and actually murdered their daughter Darian. So a lot of people recognize the importance of us being able to address this and to call on the federal government to do their part. As you know, the criminal code and any changes to the criminal code is a federal jurisdiction. But we as municipal and provincial partners have to do our part and work well with the federal government to see these changes so that there's a sense of security and safety in our community.
Well, I can't see you getting much pushback in February, but I look forward to checking in with you at that time to see how it goes. I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.